Hey, so yeah, it should be good now, hopefully. So let's go ahead and get into full screen for this. Well, actually, I need to close the tab really quickly. That way things can forward a bit easier. So yeah, in this video, I will be kind of explaining a question that I get asked a lot when I'm streaming, and that is kind of like what it means to build characters or why build characters. So yeah, I thought the first guide video that I would do, because I'm planning on doing a few guide videos for Star Rail pretty soon, since I'm going to be away for a few days. So I won't be able to stream or anything, and I'll probably run out of streams to upload on YouTube. So I thought that I would kind of have some guides and try out this form of content for the days I'm gone and everything, and then see what people kind of think about that while I'm away and everything. So yeah, this video is going to cover a lot of information I plan to go on over like more in depth in a few future videos. So this kind of going to be like almost a jack of all trades video in a way, since the full covers so much different information. Um, but yeah, basically this video will not only cover how to build characters, but it will also have some general tips, and I'll have timestamps for everything in the description. I've kind of got like a few notes on the side here to go over, and I'll probably go off the notes quite a bit, as well as just kind of the general guidelines that kind of help me stay on track and on topic, so this video doesn't get too long or anything. But first, I did want to start with a quick disclaimer. So while I do think that building characters is like pretty important for the overall gameplay of the game, especially for late game content, some people are not really as interested in going as in depth with the characters and everything. I think that's perfectly fine. Like, I don't think that if you're running like level 70 characters, and like let's say you have like the Trailblazer and you have like the wind set on your Trailblazer just because you get more damage out of it, and it's like, what do you think is optimal? Or you're just like building all damage, like you're building the Musketeer set for damage and speed on your Trailblazer, and you think that that's more effective or whatever. Basically, just like a UDU disclaimer for how you feel like playing the game, but this is kind of a video that's intended for more optimal strategies, just kind of looking at a character in general and seeing what specific things the character requires, or like the character uses, and trying to optimize that for the character in general, since there's so many characters in the game, and I will be doing guides for specific characters later on, but I thought this was kind of just be a good general guide for all characters, um, just kind of how to build, like what goes into building a character, why you should build a character, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so start off with like section 1, so I thought I would go over what is a character, since that's a pretty important thing to know. So obviously a character is what you're using in the game to play. So you have different teams. Whenever you go to your team builder, you can make a team of characters, and whenever you're starting the game, you're given 4 characters to have on your team, so that way you can make it through the first couple of tutorial sections, and later on you get a few more characters and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so characters, they have a type, like a damage type, and they have a path that they walk. So the damage types can be fire, ice, wind, and paths can be things like destruction, harmony, and abundance. So whenever you start the game, you get 50 pools at a beginner banner, and this beginner banner will give you the option to get a free 5-star out of these characters here. So you can see them on the additional rewards for the banner. So you have for the like standard banner, because at 300 pools you will get 1 additional 5-star character if you of your choice on the standard banner. But currently I'm at 209 because I haven't really focused on the standard banner too much. I've just been getting all of the free pools. Whenever I get free pools of the standard banner, that's what I use them on. I haven't been investing any resources into it specifically. But yeah, you can get Himiko, which is a fire erudition character, Welt, an imaginary nihility character, Bronya, a wind harmony character, Japard, an ice preservation character, Clara, a physical destruction character, Yongqing, an ice hunt character, and Bailu, an electric abundance character. So in like my personal opinion, the best character that you can get out of these is probably Bronya, as she provides a lot of utility, but just because you get a bad character from your like a relatively bad character from your first 50 pools doesn't mean that I think that you should reroll your account unless you just want to reroll it and play optimally, since it takes so long to do it in this game. All characters from this banner have like their own special niche pretty much and can be used. And depending on like the Memory of Chaos, which is the late game content that you're kind of focusing on when building characters later on, they kind of all have their own use in some of them. So, but in my opinion, the best is Bronya, followed by Japard, Bailu, Yongqing, Welt, Clara, and Himiko. Although currently Clara is one of the better characters, and Welt can be one of the better characters, but this is just assuming that you only have one of them as the character that you get. Like, this is your only 5-star outside of the Trailblazer. In my opinion, that would be the list. So, including the Trailblazer, you will, and counting the Trailblazer as one character, because eventually, with the Trailblazer, you can change their path, and that will also change your type to fire, but you can change it to preservation. But just counting the Trailblazer as one character, there are 9 free characters you will get, assuming that you did not get any additional characters on the first 50 pools and you just never pulled at like another banner or anything. There are basically just 9 free characters, so you get one 5-star character at the beginning of the game being the Trailblazer, you get your 50 pool character, which could be any of those that I had listed before, and then you also get a number of 4-star characters. So the 4-star characters you get are March 7th, an ice preservation character, Dawn Hung, a wind hunt character, Asta, a fire harmony character, Herda, an ice erudition character, and Serval, who is here. She is an electric erudition character. Natasha, a physical abundance character. You have this character. I can't pronounce her name. You probably can't hear it now since I turned on the audio, my bad. But yeah, you also get this character, Quantum erudition character. But yeah, sorry, I can't really pronounce her name too well. And also, oh wait, that's the last one. So yeah, you get March 7th, Dawn Hung, Asta, Herda, Serval, Natasha, and this character as your free 4-star characters. So from these 4-star characters, my personal opinion on the ones that are the best out of the free ones are Natasha, since she's pretty much the only free healer in the game. She's the only healer I have because she's the only free one, although I do have Bailu's Light Cone. I do not own them yet, so I do think that Natasha is probably the best, although if you got Bailu as your free 5-star character, then you might not want to invest in Natasha, but if you did not get Bailu, then Natasha is still really good. Like, they're pretty much in the same tier almost, because both of them have their own strengths and weaknesses to them as well, so that's kind of a nice thing about them. Even if you don't have Bailu, you still have a really strong abundance character. Then you have Dawn Hung, pretty strong hunt character. Have Asta, who can buff up a lot of units, and then she also has synergy with other fire-type characters, which, if you're running like multiple fire-type characters, your fire-type characters do more damage, which is useful if you're running like Preservation Trailblazer. Then you have Serval, I would say is still pretty strong. She was one of the characters that I had on my team for a long time during the main story as like my secondary DPS. And then March 7th, depending on your pools, like if you get Japard, March 7th pretty much becomes irrelevant, unfortunately, but she can pair really well with Clara, since the character that March 7th shields is kind of likely to be hit after being shielded. So you have Clara, who has like a counter that makes them more likely to be hit, and then you shield them with March 7th, that way they don't really take any damage from getting hit. And so you'll have Clara's follow-up attack from the counter from being hit, and then you have March 7th's follow-up attack dealing additional damage. So she has her use. Pretty much. And then Serval, as I already mentioned, is still a really strong erudition character. They're kind of just outclassed by Jinyuan, which was a character I got later on. And I hadn't really invested too much into Serval, so I was able to invest in Jinyuan instead. He's basically just kind of like a better version of her in almost every way, so fortunately she kind of got power crept in a way. And then Herta is probably the weakest character in the game at the moment. She does have some use in certain situations, but in general I would say that she's not very much a worthwhile character to invest in unless you just kind of want to mess around with like a mono ice team or something like that. You can obviously do that using her as a damage dealer if you don't have like Ching, since she does have a main DPS type being erudition. So yeah, I think these characters, like pretty much all characters in the game, are at the moment fairly strong in their own way, outside of maybe like Herta is kind of the only character who really struggles, in my opinion, to have value in pretty much any situation. But even then, like as I mentioned, if you wanted to do mono ice, you could probably run Herta. But yeah, outside of that, every character I would say in their own way is pretty worthwhile to invest in at the moment. And then there's a few additional 4-star characters, so I do actually not own all of the 4-star characters in the game at the moment because I'm missing Sampo. They were in the base game, 4-star character, but for some reason they're just completely eluding me. But outside of Sampo, Yukong is another character who was recently added as a 4-star character. They're currently on Lucha's banner pullable, and they'll be available for free in the 1.2 update if you finish a certain stage in the Forgotten Hall, I believe. They're an imaginary harmony character. But yeah, at the moment, the only way to obtain them is the Lucha banner, but after the Lucha banner is over, then you can obtain them there. And outside of that, you won't be able to get any Eidolons for her, so it's kind of like if you want more Eidolons for her, which Eidolons are like bonuses to characters' stats if you pull multiple copies of them. You have to pull multiple copies of her on Lucha's banner currently to get her Eidolon maxed out, as there's not really like an item you can use to give a character an Eidolon. The only way to do it is just to get another copy of them from whatever banner they're on. And then for character banner characters, these are 5-star characters that are available on limited time banners, and once a banner is over, you cannot obtain the character again until their banner is reran. So the first banner was Sela. I started playing the game a bit too late to obtain her, but if I had started playing the game on release, I would have had her instead of Jinyuan. The next character was Jinyuan, who I got off of the banner a little bit late into it, and then Silverwolf was the banner character after Jinyuan. I did actually miss the first 50-50 on Silverwolf. So like the way that banner pools work is you can do 90 pools at a banner, and then you're guaranteed a 5-star on the character banners for the events. And that 5-star is either the character on the banner, where you have a 50% chance of getting them, or you have a 50% chance of getting one of the other 5-stars in the game that weren't on a previous banner. So you can't get Sela, but you can get like Himiko or Clara or any of the other ones. And I ended up getting another copy of Branya, which her first Eidolon is actually still pretty strong, so I didn't really mind not getting Silverwolf there. And I thought that I wasn't going to get Silverwolf, but on pretty much my last pool, I was able to get Silverwolf on that banner. So I do have her. And then the current character on the event banner is Lucha. The next character will be Blade, which is a wind destruction character. And then on the banner after that is Kafka, which is an electric nihility character. So there are currently a lot of nihility characters being added to the game with Silver Wolf and then Blade, or not Blade, Silver Wolf and Kafka being added as future characters. So yeah, there's kind of a lot of Nihility characters. And then I pulled Welt the other day, so once I have Sampo, I can pretty much get like a full Nihility team going if I don't get Kafka on her banner, which is currently the character that I'm hoping to get on their next banner. I'm currently pulling at the Lucha banner to try to get some extra Eidolons of this character, and also to build Pity to hopefully, like, so whenever you're building Pity is basically trying to get all the way up to 90 pulls without getting the actual character that is on the banner, because whenever you hit Pity, that means that you either get the character on the banner or you miss and get someone else. And so you want to try to get as many pools of characters that you don't want out of the way, so that way whenever the character releases, it doesn't take as many pools to actually get them. And so I'm hoping to get them on the first 50-50, but if I do miss the 50-50 for the first time again, then I'll have to try to get some more pools at them. But I do want this character to at least get their 4th Eidolon at the moment, so that's why I'm currently going for this banner. So yeah, that's kind of just an overview of characters in general. So the next section is what makes a character worth building and investing in. So yeah, for this section, there's not really a true answer on why you should invest in a character, in my opinion, just because I think that you should always pick characters in general that you enjoy playing. Like, I invest in the Trailblazer. I don't recommend people invest in the Trailblazer, since they're not the strongest in the game, but because I do like the Trailblazer, and I like how their playstyle works, I invested in them. That's kind of like the first thing that I look at when building a character is, do I like their playstyle? And so, with the Trailblazer, I wanted to build them because I enjoyed their playstyle. Same thing with Junyuan, same thing with Bronya, and same thing with Chapard. And they were kind of also forced to be built for me, since they were all of the strongest characters that I had at the time. So if I wanted to go through all of the campaign content, I had to build them anyway, pretty much. And then once I finished the campaign, they're still giving me value in Memory of Chaos, being the post-campaign, late-game content. And then the next question is, do they fit the team that I'm trying to make? So this is kind of a thing for if you've already built multiple characters and you're trying to make a team of the characters, and you have new characters that you're acquiring either from pulling the characters or just through other means of getting characters, like finishing Forgotten Hall stages to get Wukong. Like, if you want to build the characters and they fit on your team, those are 2 requirements that I generally look for when building a team. And then the third requirement is not really like a full requirement, but it's, do I have another character already built that can do what they do, or are they unique to this team? So obviously Natasha and Japard fill pretty unique roles for me, as they both provide preservation and abundance factors to a team, so they're pretty invaluable in their role. As Japard is so good at shielding a team that you pretty much don't need a healer on your main team as long as you have Japard, and then Natasha is so good at healing that you don't really need a shielder. So when building characters, I have Natasha for my second team and Japard for my first team. But yeah, if I had pulled Jin Yuan after I had already invested a lot into Silver Wolf, I probably wouldn't have actually built Jin Yuan following this step here, because I already have a character that serves that role, and I've already invested so much into them that it's not really worthwhile for me to build the character that does pretty much the exact same thing, but even if it's just slightly better. And that's kind of my same thing with Welt right now. Like, I pulled Silver Wolf towards the end of her banner, so I hadn't really had much time to invest in her, and then I pulled Welt off of the standard banner a few days ago. So I've got him invested in a little bit, but at the moment I've been focusing on Silver Wolf for my Nihility character that I want to be investing in. So yeah, that's kind of just my general rules of thumb for why I'm building a character, and now to get into what actually building a character means. So yeah, whenever you're wanting to build a character, so like the basics, I guess let's just start there. Okay, so to finally get into character building, I'd like to first explain what it is. So basically, character building is analyzing how a character works and then using light cones and relics to be able to increase the effectiveness of how they work. Building characters can allow characters that would otherwise be underleveled to complete in-game content. For example, with a bit of character building I did to Solar Wolf a few days ago, I was able to get her to level 53. Now she's at level 64. I was able to use her with a level 6 light cone and at the time full 0-star or level 0 5-star relics. I was able to use her to clear the first few levels of the in-game content of Memory of Chaos. So yeah, just with like a little bit of building towards her better stats, I was able to clear out content that she was vastly underleveled for. So whenever you get characters at higher levels, as long as you've built them correctly, you're able to get a lot of value out of them. So for like explaining how character building works, I'm going to use my physical Trailblazer since this is the main character that I built, and this is a character everyone has access to. And yeah, as mentioned earlier, while I've heavily invested in my physical Trailblazer, I don't really recommend building them. I do think that the Fire Trailblazer is worth building in as long as you don't have Chapard, since Chapard is pretty much just a better version of them. But even then, the Fire Trailblazer still has their own advantages and disadvantages versus Chapard, so you can still invest in them if you have Chapard and you're wanting to get more out of your main character for whatever reason. But in general, the physical Trailblazer does eventually fall off compared to other DPS characters, so I don't really recommend investing in them unless you have no other DPS characters, or you just like their playstyle, which is the reason that I invested in them. So yeah, this character serves as a main DPS for my main team, which is another way of saying basically that the team is centered around making them deal as much damage as possible. I actually run 2 DPSs on my team, so it kind of gets both of them, or like the team kind of gets both of them having more increased damage. I didn't really know how to say that in a way that made sense, sorry. But yeah, basically it kind of focuses on having both of them have high damage. But the Trailblazer is really the main focus of the team. So the first thing you should ask yourself whenever you're building a character is, what does your character do? So you can look at your character's abilities to figure this out. This is also visible on the trees thing, but it's really easy just to see here. So to start, look at their path. So I'll actually start with their path first. So this is kind of, if you don't know what a character does at all, then you should look at their path, because this basically gives you a general overview of how each character is supposed to be played. So as long as their path matches whatever's in the description. So my character is a destruction character, so I'm going to look at what the destruction thing says. So it says, deals outstanding amounts of damage and possesses great survivability, suitable for various combat scenarios. So you have Destruction, the Hunt, and Erudition for the DPS role. The Hunt focuses on single target damage, Erudition focuses on multi-target damage, and Destruction, it says great amounts of damage and great survivability, so that's a bit vague. Basically what it means is that Destruction characters are a bit more tanky than the other 2 classes, but they don't really focus on a single type of damage, so they don't do single target damage or multi-target damage as effectively as Hunt or Erudition characters, and instead do single target damage or multi-target damage depending on the moves, kind of equally as well within themselves, but not as well as a Hunt character would do single target damage or an Erudition character would do multi-target damage. So they don't really specialize in anything. They're kind of like a jack of all trades almost. But now that you know their role, you can analyze their abilities. So their abilities will tell you what their damage scales from, or like what their abilities' effectiveness scales from. Like in Franya's case, her skill doesn't do any damage, but it does increase damage by 57%. So it'll just kind of give you an overview of what the skill does. So with the Trailblazers, farewell hit, it will deal, at level 6, 100% of the Trailblazer's attack to a single enemy. For their skill, it will do 125% of the Trailblazer's attack to a single enemy and enemies adjacent to it. And then for the ultimate, it will deal 450% of the Trailblazer's attack to a single enemy if you choose Blowout, and if you or Blowout Farewell Hit, if you choose Blowout Rip Home Run, you will deal 270% of the Trailblazer's attack to a single enemy, with the two adjacent enemies taking 162% damage. So it's kind of like combining the basic attack and the skill into like a choice, so you can either do an upgraded version of the basic attack or an upgraded version of the skill with the ultimate. So if you'll notice, all of these actually scale based on the Trailblazer's attack, meaning that you'll want to increase your Trailblazer's attack to get a higher amount of damage from all of the different damage options. So, yeah, that's what I had posted there. So there are a few other things that you want to look at outside of just attack. So if I can go ahead and go to the stats screen here, the 3 other things that you want to look at, you can't actually see it on this screen, you can see it on this one though. You want to look at crit rate, crit damage, and the damage type. So for crit damage and crit rate, you generally want to achieve as much crit damage as possible. So like the attack doesn't really matter as much as crit rate because of a lot of like basically how the math works. I'll show it later on stream, although I'll have it skippable so that way you don't just have to sit through all of the explanation of the math. Basically what you need to know is that attack damage isn't really as important as getting your crit damage up as much as possible. You still want your attack damage up as much as possible, but the main thing to focus on is crit damage. And then you also want to have crit rate. But if you have 200% crit damage and 0.5% crit rate, then you're never critting, even though you do a lot of crit damage. So in general, you want a ratio of 2% crit damage to 1% crit rate, which my Trailblazer does not achieve outside of like a few additional stats that you can't really see because of their paths and stuff. But this is not a properly built character, I would say, since their crit rate is so low compared to their crit damage. And honestly, their crit damage is pretty low. I kind of just have everything focusing on attack at the moment, and later on I will be getting better relics for my Trailblazer to kind of fix all of this. But yeah, I would say you probably want to get up to about 80% crit rate on his DPS character, and then 160% or higher crit damage, because once you reach 80% crit rate, you're already critting a lot more often than you're not critting. There's not really a reason to get to 100% crit rate or higher unless you just specifically want to, because whenever you're at higher than 100% crit rate, you're still crit rating, or you're still getting a critical hit all of the time anyway, so it doesn't necessarily matter at that point. So you can get it up to like 80 to 85% or whatever and still crit more often than you're not critting by a pretty significant amount. And then the other important stat is the damage type. So characters in Star Rail only have one type, with the Trailblazer here is just going to be physical. So there are currently 2 ways to universally increase type specific damage. Non-universal ways are character specific that I won't really be getting into. So the first is relic sets. So for your relic sets, there's every like damage type in the game. So your physical, fire, ice, lightning, wind, quantum, and imaginary damage all have a different relic set that specifically increases them by at least 10% for the 2-piece version. And then the Planar Sphere has, for its main stat, one of the random options is a specific type damage boost, and you generally want that on your character. Like my character has attack percent, eventually I'm going to want it to be that physical damage percent instead, but at the moment attack percent is fine for how I built the character. So yeah, in general you want to make sure that is matching whatever character. Like you don't usually want to have Actually, in any case, as far as I'm aware, you don't want to have like a fire damage boost on a physical character, since you're not really getting any value out of it. With the Trailblazer specifically, you might get value out of it whenever you switch to Preservation, but yeah, in general, you just want to, for DPSs at least, have that damage boost bonus, and even for non-DPS characters, you can still have that wind damage boost. For Bronya, for example, since she's a wind character, you still have value out of wind damage boost. So yeah, that's pretty much the main universal ways of increasing that. So now to touch upon light cones a little bit. So for light cones, I use On the Fall of an Aeon, which gives some attack percentage buffs to the character depending on if certain conditions are met, and these stack. So basically, light cone will have a specific ability that is generally really good for whatever character you're using on the tier of the light cone. So 4 stars and 5 stars are pretty good. There are some 3-star light cones that are pretty good even, but most of the time you just want to focus on 4-star and 5-star light cones for most characters. And you want to have ones that have abilities that synergize with how your character plays. So depending on what character you're playing is what light cone you want to use. And then you can only use light cones that are specific to your character's path. So they only will work on characters for Path of Destruction, so that's why I am running it on a character who has a Path of Destruction. Obviously, whenever you switch to the Preservation one, the game even tells you to make sure that you change your light cone and relics to fit their playstyle a bit more. But yeah, light cones also give you some raw stats, which aren't really as important as the main light cone ability. I would say just focus on this overall, and then focus on the stats later. Like, the 5-star light cones give you the most, and then the 3-star light cones give you the least amount of main stats, or like these additional stats here. So yeah, now I'm going to get into the math part of this. So I'll have a timestamp in the description if you just want to go ahead and skip this part, since this does get a little bit complicated. So yeah, I'm going to use Don Hung to explain this, since it's a bit easier for me to do it here. And this can be a little bit complicated, so once again, if you don't want to see how all this math works, the explanation that I provided before is pretty sufficient at explaining how everything works for general use, but this will kind of just go into why everything works how it does, like how the game calculates stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm going to look at Down Hung here to help explain this next part, as it can be pretty complicated. I'm pretty much just going to be looking at my notes for this, because I have it written down pretty explicitly. So to do an example of an attack on an enemy with 0 defense, or like 0 resistances, just to keep the math as simple as possible, I'm going to start with your base damage being whatever your attack is, times whatever attack attack percentage is given by your skill. So I'm just going to say that Don Hung has 1000 attack, and the basic attack here does 100% of my Don Hung's attack to an enemy. So that means that I currently do 1000 damage. Then a multiplier of bonus damage is added, and this multiplier can come from light cones. So for Don Hung's light cone, I have Only Silence Remains at Superimposition 4. It gives 24 or 28% attack increase. So that's just a direct 28% increase to the damage before. And then you can also see the damage type bonus here. This is where this is added. For Don Hung, it's 29.7%. I'm just going to round it up to 30%. So in total, I have 28% plus 30% bonus damage, which is 58%. So to add this to the damage from earlier, you take the 1000 damage and you multiply it by 1.58 or 1580 base damage. So that's just how much damage your attack is doing in general if you do not crit. But if you do crit, the same formula is applied pretty much. So Hung has a 61% crit damage increase, 61.6. So let's just say it's 60%. You take that 1580 base damage, you multiply that times 1.60, and that gives you 2,528 crit damage. So for total damage, you would need to know the enemy's defense and resistances, and that would just add a bunch of math to everything. But basically, I have another tab here. We exit full screen and switch the tabs to the one I did all the math on. So yeah, you have the 1,000 base damage times your skill gives you 1,000 skill damage. Then you have 1,000 skill damage times the bonus damage gives you the 1580 base damage. Then you take that 1580 base damage and give some crit damage to that, and that gives you your 2,528 crit damage. And then after that, you would do additional math depending on your opponent's defense and resistances and all of that kind of stuff, but that's just getting into a lot more complicated things, and you can't really see all of that anyway, so it doesn't necessarily matter. So yeah, now to go into the final section of this guide, which is going to be talking about non-DPS characters. So in Honkai Star Rail, there are other rules than just DPS characters. While you can run just DPS characters, they're a bit hard to keep alive without a Preservation or Abundance character to shield or heal them. And you also want to make sure that your DPS is doing damage from Harmony characters buffing them or Nihility characters debuffing your opponents. So yeah, these non-DPS characters are a vital part of any team, and it's important in my opinion to have at least one Preservation or Abundance character in any like non-challenge run team. Like if you're doing a challenge and you're just doing like all Destruction team or all Harmony team or whatever, then obviously don't need a Preservation there, or Preservation or Abundance there. But in general, you generally like want to have a Preservation or an Abundance character on a team, maybe even both depending on the team. But like having both Natasha and Japard, in my opinion, is kind of overkill for 90% of situations. There might be like that 10% situation where an opponent's just doing way too much damage and you need both, but most of the time you can get away with just having one or the other, either a Preservation or an Abundance character. With March 7th, because she can only shield one character at a time, it might be worthwhile to have Natasha and March 7th. Especially since, at least with how I built March 7th so far, with her being built a lot less than Japard, her shield would be a lot weaker than Japard's shield, for me specifically, so having a healer might be pretty important there. So yeah, I would recommend for building characters in general to prioritize building your DPS character, then your Preservation or Abundance character, and then your Harmony and Nihility character that you're running on team. I would have one of each of those rules on the team in general, either Preservation or Abundance in either Harmony or Nihility, since you can either buff or debuff. And then for the fourth position on a team, this is kind of getting into a bit of team building, and I'll go over that more in depth in the team building video, but for the fourth member, you can either have another DPS character, like for my team, I run 2 DPS characters, or you can have like another buffer slash debuffer, so you can have like a Harmony and a Nihility character, or you could even run another Preservation characters, have 2 Preservations, have 2 Abundances, whatever you want that final rule to be, like depending on which situation, or like what type of situation you're going into, you can have that rule be whatever you need for that. Or you can just be like me and try to have one that fits for most situations, which would be a second DPS character, in my opinion, would probably fit best to have in most situations. So for like the main story, I had 2 DPS characters. But with that being said, that's pretty much all there is to building characters. Alongside the team video, I plan on releasing a few character-specific build guides for all the characters I'm currently invested in, and we'll also go over why I think investing in them was worth it, and other related things. And all of the guide videos that I'm planning on releasing will be in a playlist that I put in the description that will be updated to include them whenever they release. They'll probably probably, sorry, be listed as unlisted videos or private videos until they're uploaded, since I'll have them scheduled to be uploaded at my regular uploading time and everything. But yeah, that will be pretty much all I have to say for now. So yeah, if there are any comments or like questions, I can answer those in whenever I have time. Like as soon as I see them, pretty much I will be trying to write an answer that will hopefully answer the questions and everything. So yeah, guys, I'll see everyone in the next one.